Hi everyone, this is Gail. I just wanted to have a little recap follow up of last night's webinar. First of all, I want to thank you for signing up. There was actually over 60 people that came into the webinar, in and out, and unfortunately I had to compete with Donald Trump. But anyway, so I decided I would leave the recording up for those of you that missed it. It's not going to be up for a long time, but just to recap, in the webinar last night, we talked about how the mitochondria is actually where the whole immune cascade start. Okay, so the mitochondria, it has these little proteins on the surface, and then it just starts leaking. It notices when somebody's trying to steal energy from it, and so it's like, shores up. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody's trying to steal energy. So it's like, whatever, what we do when we're threatened is we like throw up walls, we withdraw our support, and we kind of hold on to our reserves. Well, the mitochondria is doing that too. And then it pumps out oxygen, it pumps out ATP, and then the immune system gets activated from that. That's where it all starts, with the mitochondria. I can see that in the organic acids. I see that with, I can tell which cellular cycle. We talked last night about the mitochondria cell defense cycle, and it goes through full circle to get back to healing. And a lot of us get stuck in the inflammatory side of the mitochondria. And what that looks like many times on the organic acids test, when I'm looking at a NutrIval or oats test, is what I'll see is high ketones. Okay, and a lot of times the mitochondria markers may look somewhat normal. I might see high citrate, I might see high malate, and maybe a couple of the other ones, but how it shunts the ATP out of the mitochondria is through the malate shuttle. Okay, and then when that ATP comes out of the mitochondria, then it can go into the ketone pathway. The body, it's a very complex pathway where two ATP put together and make ketones, and so that way we can still have some energy being made even though the mitochondria is shut down. I can see that in the organic acids test, so I can tell what phase of the healing cycle you're in. And then when I see all the intermediates are like low, then I know that, like, okay, so now we're in the healing phase 2 of the mitochondria, because that's when it's needing to bring in amino acids. It's needing a lot of things to refill that citric acid cycle so it can like pump out ATP. And and then we also talked about inflammation. Those of you that were watching it, so like when we get a pathogen that comes in, they start multiplying, and then so I had like a yellow line that comes up, so then the pathogen starts multiplying. Well, then the immune system ramps up, and it starts making all these inflammatory mediators, things that go and attack. And then it ramps up. So when it gets to a certain point, then it kills pathogen and it comes down. And so now you've got to figure out, how do I resolve this inflammation with the immune system? And that's done with some anti-inflammatory cytokines in PGE2, which is from fish oils. Okay, and then I talked about how NSAIDs, they'll work really well for the first couple of days, but you really never should take an NSAID more than 3 days, because NSAIDs block conversion of DHA and EPA to the pro-resolving mediators that resolve the inflammatory response. So what happens is, even though you've like cured the infection, your immune system's still up here and it's very inflammatory. Okay, and you can't ever resolve it. And then that causes a lot of tissue damage, and then we end up stimulating the autoimmune pathway with all this tissue damage. Okay, and then I talked a little bit about the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system, because our immune system has 2 arms, right? And the very first system that comes into play when a pathogen comes in is the innate system. We're born with it. Okay, it's like, and in my diagram, I had these diagrams of little Pac-Man going around, and it just goes around, and it samples everything. And so it like goes up and it's like samples your tissue, and it's like, is this me? And it's like, okay, it's me. And so it just kind of like, let's go, and it floats around, and it keeps going around like little Pac-Man, just gobbling up all the little, critters. I don't know if y'all remember that video game from the 80s, but my kids loved it. Anyway, so that's the immune system, and its job really is to hold down the fort until the adaptive immune system, which is very, very specific, because the innate immune system, these cells going around, they're not specific. They just will eat anything. They'll eat chemicals. We put that toxic products on ourselves, and they get absorbed in the skin. They're just going to eat that and take it to the lymph to try to get rid of it, because we've got so many toxins. Our innate immune system has a really huge job of kind of grabbing them and getting rid of them before it causes tissue damage. And the tissue damage, can cause like autoimmunity if we have too much of it and we're unable to resolve inflammation. Okay, and we're unable to clear it. So I talked about, what can go wrong with that innate immune system. So, and I talked about like when the neutrophils like come in and they eat the pathogen, they get cleared. They eat the pathogen, and then the macrophage comes and it like engulfs the whole neutrophil, and it doesn't spill out the contents, and the macrophage swims over to the lymph, and everything like just gets excreted, and and then the EPA and DHA, those pro-resolving mediators, come in, and it resolves the inflammation. Okay, so but what if we don't have enough macrophages to come in to eat the neutrophils? The neutrophils are sitting there because they're like little Nemo. They just have these little polywags. They can't swim. The macrophages, they're really big. They're called the big eater, and they eat everything. They even eat the neutrophils. It's like, I'm going to eat everything. So when the neutrophil is like, eat something, it has like these enzymes. They're really nasty, y'all. Those enzymes, it's like acid. It just liquefies everything. So the neutrophils will liquefy the pathogen once it eats it, and it like the enzymes will poke holes in it, and it just like and then it, they just lyse it out. But the neutrophil holds all that inside, okay, and if the macrophage doesn't come along and clear it, within 8 hours, those neutrophils are going to start becoming necrotic. Have you ever seen necrotic skin where it's just like sloughing off and like really nasty? Well, the neutrophils, they split open, and all of those nasty enzymes and pathogen bits and everything. Now, guess what happens? There's more neutrophils to come in to clean up the mess, more and more neutrophils, and then you don't have enough macrophages to come in and clean up the mess. Now you've got a lot of tissue debris. Guess what happens when you have a lot of tissue debris? The dendritic cells, now they're what we call the specialized, they're professional antigen presenting cells. The dendritic cells will take things over to the adaptive immune system. Now, the adaptive immune system, that immune system is very targeted for once the pathogen gets inside the cell. So the innate immune system is getting everything in the body fluids and the cytosol and all your mucous membranes, okay? But if it's not sufficient and the pathogen actually gets in the cell, now the adaptive immune system has to go in and help, okay? And what it does is it makes two different kinds of what we call CD4 and CD8. So the CD8, all they do is they just like go and kill the cell directly. Whatever it is, it's like, okay, that cell's sick, boom, and it takes it out, okay? And the CD4 makes all the T helper cells. And there's all these different kinds of T helper cells, but the main ones that we are concerned with is the T helper 1, and we secrete T helper 1 cells in response to bacteria and viruses. And then there's the Th2 cells, and the Th2 cells are secreted in response to worms and parasites, and you know, and sometimes like fungus. And we typically find those Th2 cells in all the hollow spaces, like the sinus, the lung, the gut, the bladder. Okay, and then we have the Th17 cells. Now that's the autoimmune pathway. Okay, and a Th17 can exist with a Th1 or a Th2. And then the fourth one is what we call T regulatory cells. And its job, it's secreted with all the other T cells. So whatever T cell you're making, you're going to make some T regulatory cells, because its job is to regulate it. It's like, whoa, hold on, you're making too many. You know, you got to keep the immune system in check, right? So you got to have this push-pull. And so the T regs go in and kind of help. Okay, so now you've got these different T cells, and they all swing back and forth all the time. And actually you can have a Th1 cell like at the back of your neck, and then you have a Th17 for the rheumatoid arthritis. You can have a Th1 because you have cardiovascular disease. You can have a Th2 because you have gut dysbiosis. So you can have like these T cell polarizations in different parts of your body. Okay, and you know, so as a practitioner, what I have to do is try to figure out, well, what is your innate immune system working well? Are your T cells off balance? What polarization is going on? You know, correlate it with your symptoms. Can we find all the triggers? Can we remove all the triggers? And so I do this like really extensive intake. You know, it's kind of insane. I make people fill out about 6 different forms to work with me, because before I even talk to them, I already kind of know, like I'm making a list. You're not doing this right. You're eating this and this. You're putting on some toxic products. You had a house that flooded with mold. All of these, I've got this whole list of like, we got to like fix this straight up. Okay. And then I'll have a list like, well, this and this and this could be going on. I think I need to look at this test, and this is really going to help me. And so, you know, one of the biggest things is the food in our diet. And when we eat food, that's where like our immune system's in our gut, because like everything come in, it's like an antigen, and that the T regs, its job is in the gut is to like put the brakes on the immune system so that you can tolerate your food and you don't have an immune response. Well, when you start having food sensitivities, guess what? You're losing your oral tolerance, okay? And that can be caused by a lot of different things, and stress plays a very huge role, a lot bigger role than most people think about. And, you know, and I've been trying to recover from my toxic mold poison for 10 years, and I'm pretty well, but I still have some sensitivities. And I haven't like completely recovered from all my stress responses and all of my, you know, all my past traumas and everything. And, you know, I have so many, it's just like taking a long time, but I'm really working hard at doing everything I can do. So, you know, so how do you approach all of this? You know, if you don't have the base things like fixed, I don't care what supplement, who you hire, you can go and hire these people that do all your genetics. You're like, oh my gosh, you know, I have MTHFR, and I have CBS, and I have COMT, and nobody's even looked at the fact that you have inflammasome activity because of all the crap foods you're eating, or your, you know, or the toxic products, and or your stress level. You know, nobody's looking at all of these low-hanging fruit, and so that's why, like when I'm assessing the immune function, I gotta like make sure you are getting enough oxygen to your brain and your tissue, okay? So your brain needs two things to function. It needs oxygen and it needs glucose. Your brain can't use fats and it can't use proteins for energy. It can use ketones in a pinch, you know, but only if there's no glucose floating around, all right? So if, you know, and one of the clues is when you're having reactive hypoglycemia, you know, that's like, that means like you probably got a lot of inflammation that's affecting your brain. And an impaired brain needs more fuel just to perform a simple task. Think about it. An impaired brain needs more fuel to perform a simple task. So what's that going to mean? That means if you have glucose, low glucose, and you're having reactive hypoglycemia, you know, and you have an impaired brain, like maybe you had previous traumatic injuries or something, and an inflamed brain, it's going to use more fuel. And what happens when there's not enough fuel? You're going to have this reactive hypoglycemia, and then that causes all kind of crazy behaviors. And then you're not going to be able to sleep through the night because your brain is sending out stress chemistry to wake you up, to like, hey, feed me, you know, I need some glucose. And it secretes this cortisol, and the cortisol, of course, you know, with our diurnal wake, sleep, wake cycle, that's what wakes us up in the morning. So it might secrete enough cortisol. And if it doesn't have enough cortisol to help the brain, then it starts recruiting its friends, you know, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and now you're waking up in a panic attack because norepinephrine is like, and you know, it makes you palpitate, and you're just like, you're like that. So if you're waking up and you're having palpitations, you know, there's something wrong with the whole metabolic thing of the brain. That and Xanax and Ambien, lorazepam, that ain't gonna fix anything. Okay, that actually makes things worse. You know, so we need to, you know, if you're in that kind of state, we need to make sure that the baseline stuff is covered. That, you know, your blood glucose is being supported. You don't have high blood pressure. That you're getting enough perfusion. You know, so are you exercising, or are you bedridden? You know, so if you're not getting enough tissue, blood, and if you're not getting enough blood flow to the brain and all your tissue, what do you think's going to happen? If the tissues in your muscles don't get enough oxygen, they're going to undergo tissue damage. They're going to send out stress signals. So guess what? Now the immune cells are like all interested in these tissues that are sick, and they start eating it. And they can take it over to the lymph when you got these damaged tissues. And then now, and that's where the T cells are hiding. They're all like in your lymph cells. They're just sitting there waiting. Like, when are you going to give me an antigen? Because I want to make a specific antibody to go and target and kill that cell. So if what happens, let's say you're using toxic products, okay? And the chemicals are in your skin and is causing damage. And now maybe it's caused some cell damage, and the cell fragment is attached to that chemical. And let's say a macrophage or a dendritic cell takes it over to the lymph, and now your T cell's like, oh boy, I'm going to make an antibody to this. And guess what? It's going to go home back to that same place and start attacking anything that looks like that, which means it's going to go to your tissue, and it's going to create autoimmune disease. And all of this inflammasome activation in our tissue, I guarantee you that is the underlying driver of autoimmunity, that Th17 response, okay? And so, you know, we have to approach this. There's so many factors that play into it. That's why there's not one solution. That's why conventional medicine doesn't have any answers, because there's not just one drug. There's not a solution. You have to like look at all of those things. And last night I had this whole pillar, like a chart of 14 things, and there's probably 1,400 things actually, but those are the main things. And we can change most of those. I mean, we can't change our genetics, but like if you do have the dreaded MTHFR, I mean, we can like, you know, assess it and bypass it and like help it limp along so that you're not going to be undermethylating. And if you have poor blood flow, we can talk about things to do to help improve circulation. There's a lot of just even low level activity. And then and then I talked about the V light last night, this red light therapy. What it does is it increases blood flow in the capillaries and in the brain. And so you have to reduce all of the stressors and increase the blood flow, optimize the mitochondria output. You have to remove all these triggers. And one thing I talked about last night too was the complement cascade. Anybody remember that me talking about that? How the macrophages, they have a little receptor on it, and we have the complement proteins, and they just they find they're just floating around. Okay, they're called complement, and they're not inflammatory, they're not active. But when they see a pathogen or something that's not supposed to be there, they cover it. Okay, and they put like this really tasty sugary coating, and it's very tasty to the macrophages, and the macrophages have a little receptor for it, and that helps it bind to it, because the macrophages can't bind to things without that complement. That's how it doesn't eat our own self tissue, because our self tissue doesn't have the complement on it. Okay, so these pathogens come in, it has the complement. The macrophages can bind to it and eat it. And those complement activation, most of the time, is by a food. Okay, and lectins are the #1 food that activate complement. So if you're having a lot of tissue damage, and that's why I really stress the paleo diet, and especially the autoimmune paleo diet, when somebody's in an inflamed state. And I also recommend some food testing. This is the food test that I use. It's called the KBMO. It's a home test kit, and it really doesn't take any analysis. I tell my clients, I'm like, yeah, stick your finger and send the test kit in. And when I upload the results in your portal, you don't have to wait for me to have a session with you. Just delete the foods that's 2 + 2 + 3 + 4 out of your diet. Those are the foods that's actually causing inflammation. The old food sensitivity test only tests for IgE. This is very specific. This is actually testing for inflammation, that complement that's very, very inflammatory. And if you don't remove the things that's causing it, you're not going to get well. So just think about it. If you got a tack in your foot and you're walking around with a tack, what is going to help more? Is it going to help more by taking an aspirin or by removing the tack? So if you think about it like that, I don't care if you take 10 aspirin, your foot's still going to hurt, and it's not going to stop hurting until you remove that tack. Well, the same thing with these foods, and in the tissue, it's going to be the whole gut lining will be inflamed, and then those things can get out and cause tissue damage everywhere else. You'll get these clogs that can clog the artery, and they can go into the joints and the tissue. And I have had 3 clients recently that came to me, and they complained of allodynia, which is hurts when your clothes touch your skin. Have you ever had the flu? And then you hurt so much that it's even the clothes, when it touches your skin, it just hurts. That's a very painful condition to have to live with day in and day out. And a lot of times that's caused by that complement. And then we talked a little bit about stress. I don't think any practitioner I know of puts as much emphasis on stress, because stress blocks the vagal motor outflow from the brain. And the vagus nerve is directing digestion. It tells your pancreas and your stomach to make gastric acid, make digestive enzymes, and for motility. So if you are constipated, then you don't have enough vagal motor outflow, because that is controlled right here by the vagus nerve, and it's actually up your nose, right up right up your nose, like up there, and it's connected all the way to the gut, and there's signals back and forth from the gut to the brain, and the brain is what's directing the digestive ability. And if you and inflammation and stress blocks the vagus nerve outflow. Okay, so then you're becoming constipated, you lose your gastric motility. Now the little creepy crawlers from the colon are going up to the small intestines, and they shouldn't be there. And guess what happens? And what happens when you're not making gastric acid? You can't kill pathogen on your food. Okay, so now you're like in a big problem. Okay, so there's a lot of things you have to do to stimulate that vagal motor outflow. And one of the things, some things that I do is laughter yoga and chanting. You know, on YouTube, there's some really good chanting CDs, chanting and humming, sing really loud, like when I'm trying to clean the house or something. I decided, like this morning, I'll just put on some Michael Jackson, and I'm going around, beat it, beat it, beat it, beat it, da, 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 and I'm like loving it, singing really loud. When I'm in my car, I put on a chanting CD and I'm humming, and then sometimes I go around, you know, thumping my thymus, you know, and like improving my immune system. I do that crazy, you know. Sometimes I have to like close the blinds here because I'm doing my like DNRS thing, and I'm like doing all these things, and I'm thumping my thymus, and I'm saying, I'm great, I'm amazing, doing all my affirmations and gratitude list and all that, and yelling to try to get my vagus motor outflow working. And I know, you know, there's a crazy guy that lives across the street. He's he can see right through here, but he's like been gone. But when he's home, I know when he's home, so I close my blinds so he doesn't like watch me and like have me committed for being so nutty. But anyway, another thing I do is the alpha stem. There's a lot of y'all, you know, y'all might have seen me put a post on it today, the alpha stem. And it's kind of like EMDR. There's a really great thread today on the on EMDR therapy. And this is kind of, you know, it's EMDR is expensive, and it's very time consuming, and it works, okay? But this, I've been using this for the past year to really help me, because I'm doing a lot of that DNRS retraining in EMDR. So when I'm doing some of my homework and stress, or if I just feel really stressed and annoyed, you know, I put this, well, you know, right now I'm wearing these things, but you know, you clip them to your ears, and then you turn it on, and then it like scrambles your brain and changes the alpha waves. It's called alpha stem. It's almost like EMDR, because it gives little stimulation, tick, 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 like EMDR, tick, you know, back and forth, back and forth. I don't even have to concentrate. Let me take these things on whatever it is that's like annoying the heck out of me and causing me anxiety. I can just like wear it, and it looks like headphones, you know, I wear it, oops, this fell out. I wear it around, and you know, that you can just wear it and put it in your pocket, and people think you're like really cool. You're like, wow, look at that grandmother. She's like wearing these headphones, and she cool. Listen to her like chill music. And I'm actually wearing this thing, you know. So, you know, I probably wear this about three or four times during the day, and you can dial it up or dial it down. And so it just kind of lowers the overall cortisol output, and all of the, you know, the amygdala, the limbic, it's just sending out stress signals to your body. It just kind of lowers that somewhat to where like I'm just like at a calmer state, you know, and it's kind of training new pathways for those neurons to go, you know, because I'm really bound and determined that before I die, I'm going to clear all those traumas. Here I'm 63 and I'm still working on my childhood. Anyway, but you know, here's the alpha stem. I think you should, if you're interested in this, you can go to their website. There's a lot of really great videos And there's like dozens and dozens of studies, and it's been approved by the FDA for trauma and PTSD, anxiety, sleep. It really lowers the cortisol and stress response, so you can get into a really deep sleep. And you can get this through me. If you're wanting to get it, you can send me a message. And and then the food sensitivity test, if you're interested in getting that, even if you don't want to work with me and you're interested in this test, this has to go through a practitioner. Any of my followers in my group, I consider all of y'all like my children and my followers and my little pets that, I give special deals to. So if any of y'all want a food sensitivity test, send me a message, and it's just a fingerprint. Can be done anywhere. And then of course the V-Light, and I do have special deals. There's the 810. The 810 increases, what you do is you wear this. Here, I have one here. You wear this on your nose, you turn it on and stick it up your nose, and you turn it on, and it shoots a red light of certain wavelengths. So the 810 increases the energy output in the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is the part of the brain where we have our inhibitory. So if you're in sympathetic overdrive all the time, you may not have enough parasympathetic. And by giving more energy into the cerebellum, you can kind of help with that parasympathetic response. And interesting, I started using this 2 years ago, and the day that I got it, I had the flu, and I was sick. It was day 6, and I put it up my nose at 6 o'clock in the evening, and, I honestly thought I was dying of the flu, and I thought, here I'm a nutritionist. I'm never going to get sick because I know how to eat, and then I ended up with the flu. But anyway, so I did it at 6 p.m. I woke up at 3 a.m., and I did it again. And the next morning, I woke up at 7 and I was completely cured of the flu. No symptoms, no like congestion, because I'd been hacking, coughing, mucus, all of that was completely gone. And anybody that had bought one of these that had like chronic sinus infections, they had said that that their sinus infection cleared up like in one day, or 2 days. It was like amazing. And so the 633 improves blood flow, and then there's also the X Plus. Now the X Plus is the 633 and the 810. You look like Cyclops. You put it here, and then it goes around to the back, and you put one thing up your nose. So the 633 goes up the nose, and the 810 shines up underneath your skull through the back of your brain to shoot towards the cerebellum. So this one is kind of cool because you get the 633 and the 810. And I sell all of these too. But I hope you enjoyed my my webinar. If you didn't get to see it, I'm considering putting it on YouTube, but it's going to be private only. I'm not going to let all the practitioners watch it. This is going to be, it's really more promotional, because I think a lot of you guys know me and follow me and trust me, but I think I don't think some of you guys understand how much I can help with your autoimmunity and how quickly. I just had a lady that I saw yesterday, saw her 3 weeks ago. Her symptom score was 188. Yesterday, 75% better. Boom, like that. And I'm getting a lot of those because I really studied functional immunology really hard, and that's all I studied for a whole year. And I'm really good at it. All right. And so I know how to assess what's going on in the immune system, what's causing it, what we need to do to remove the triggers, and how to fix it, how to modulate it, and how to block certain pathways. I dream that stuff at night, and I love it. And nothing makes me feel better is to see somebody come in. And so I decided that, I would just offer that package, because typically it costs, my initial consult is $450 to do, the whole assessment. And then for the first consult. But I'm offering this, and I'm buying the labs. I'm paying for the labs, $495 to for you to look at all of your intake forms in these labs. And I'm happy to do it for you guys. So if you're interested in doing that, I'm only going to be offering that through the weekend. And so thinking about it, talk it over with your spouse, and kind of look up your finances, and just think, how much have you spent so far? What's it worth to you to put your autoimmunity into a better place, and to get up and live your life again and feel good? I mean, how much is that worth to feel good? How many doctors have you been to? How many functional medicine specialists? How many of y'all have like done the whole HTMA from that Bob Miller guy or whatever, whoever he is, whatever, and does the whole genetic thing, like spend hundreds of dollars on the whole genetic thing. And then nobody's like really looking at, the low hanging fruit, and here it is right here. And nobody has hired somebody that has the training that I've had in 6 years of grad school, and not counting my pharmacist degree and 30 years experience working as a pharmacist and knowing what doesn't work. That's why I got out of it. Anyway, so my computer's falling down. I'm going to let y'all go for the evening. I think I talked too long already, but I had a great time last night with the live webinar. And if those of you that are my followers, if you're not a practitioner, I will let some of you like watch it, and I would have to put your email in my put it in there to allow you to watch it. Anyway, good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.